Welcome to Archery Country Podcast.
Hello. If you haven't noticed, this is obviously not Big Wade. You may have heard my voice before on one other podcast, which we talked about crossbows in that one. And my name is Desiree, and I work at the Rogers shop. But I'm not a bow tech like the rest of the guys here. I just do marketing and internet e-commerce things. And
she does a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
She's what we call a shop mama.
Yeah.
So not only is she what she just said as far as marketing and social media and takes care of, but she's also like our counselor here at the shop.
During busy season.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about something that we hear every day in the shop right now, right?
Yeah.
And that is broadheads, because we are about 22 or 23 days away from opener.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Minnesota.
Yeah, here in Minnesota. And it's, I would say, I think I hear it at least once a day when I'm walking around in the shop. So I am not as versed in wrenching on bows and things like that. So I'm not the most educated on like which broadhead to shoot for what reason. So I think what we should dive into first is the factors to consider when choosing your broadhead. Like when you talk to customers, like what are the things that you're thinking about when they're choosing?
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% based off of application. So what are you going to be hunting?
Right.
So are you hunting turkeys? Are you hunting bear? Are you hunting mule deer where you might be taking a longer shot? There's quite a few variables when it comes to that conversation.
Yeah, I kind of have like a rule of three. So what the debate is, if fixed versus mechanical, and then applications and why this, why that, and we're giving you just a little bit more insight because fortunately for us, we see it all. Your average Joe, they see their setup, or they see their son setup or their wife setup, or what they see on YouTube, you know. But for every individual out there, you could be a 30-inch draw shooting 75 pounds, or you could, there's three things. So back to the topic, there's the three rules that I go by. Draw weight, draw length, and then what are you shooting? What animal are you shooting? Mm-hmm. That if you can give me those three answers, then I can give you three products that I would strongly recommend.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, if you read this on your iPhone or on your radio, and I'm trying really hard not to be the host here, sorry.
That's fine.
But we struck your attention with the Big Broadhead Debate. But we're not going to debate. Like we're going to give you the positives and the negatives, and then we're going to feed you with a bunch of scenarios. Luckily, we have you as an anomaly of what we usually see in the shop. Because usually it's a guy that's from 18 to 45 shooting anywhere from 27 inches to 30 inches and 60 pounds to 75,
Which is very different from where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
Which is,
but I go by those. If you can answer those three questions for me, then I have a pretty good idea where I'm going.
Yep.
Okay. So let's dig into, I kind of thought we'd do it like fixed blades, pros and cons, and then mechanicals, pros and cons.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, let's just lay it out on the table. I'm a mechanical broadhead dude. I have been for a long time. The last time I shot a fixed blade broadhead was 2002 in South Dakota in Custer, the National Forest.
And what draw weight do you pull?
Now I'm shooting basically 72 to 77 pounds.
Okay.
29 and a half is my draw length. Arrow length is 27 3/4. Usually I go on the stiff side, and my arrow weight averages 440 to 525.
Here's a good question too. Do you guys choose your broadhead first or your arrows? Like how do you, right? Because you sometimes, depending on what you shoot, you might need to stiffen up or.
Yeah, it's kind of based off your bow. It seems like every
You
bow
mean personally or customer?
Both. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's all based off of, I guess, overall specs on a bow when it comes to picking out an arrow, if that's what you're asking. And then, like, for myself, and I think you're like probably the same way, is it kind of depends on how each bow shoots a certain arrow. I don't shoot exactly the exact same arrow that I have the last 5 years.
No. Yeah, I have 3 bows rolling right now and 3 different arrow builds.
I could tell you I probably have at least 8 to 10 different sets of arrows in my garage right now.
well, I think that's sort of my question. So I think for me, being someone who's, I would say, the newer to the archery game, when you get a set of arrows, you generally have like 100 grain broadheads or 100 grain field tips on there. So you think when you go to the shop and you see a different broadhead that's maybe 125 grain or 150 grain, like that's confusing to me because I'm like, well, don't you want the same weight?
Yeah, exactly. Whatever you're practicing with and whatever you're sighted in with. So 100 grain is like the industry standard. Mm-hmm. The day of shooting super heavy broadheads, I don't think it's over, but it's diminishing because we're taking and boosting our FOC with weighted inserts.
Oh, yeah.
So, you can get all the way up to 200 grain insert with a 100 grain head is still 300.
Right. And like 15, 20 years ago, there was no such thing as like super heavy inserts. It was just heavier broadheads or tips. Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Yep.
So that's where you have, back in the day, 150 grains wikis and 125 thunderheads. You can buy a pack of, I think it was 12 broadheads at Fleet Farm for $25.
I was say 15, $20 or something. Yeah.
But like that's not 2023 anymore. And honestly, we only carry one broadhead that's over 125 grains. Mm-hmm. That's a kudu. Then we have, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 125 grain options. Mm-hmm. And then 40 100 grain options.
Right.
So,
and then regarding inserts, we have pretty wide variety of weighted inserts. I mean, you've got Easton brass inserts. You have stainless steel inserts from Victory.
I know what. We got Ethics we got
inserts.
Easton's, you said hit.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go, I think the lightest insert we have is 20.
It's like an Easton hit.
Well, that's 16 grains, yep.
Do people play with those insert weights more with fixed broadheads or mechanical broadheads, or is it pretty much the same?
Depending on the person.
It just depends.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it, to be honest, is they don't know what they're doing. The basics of an arrow. So if you add weight to the tip of the arrow, you weaken the shaft. So like we've said on however many podcasts,
right?
That number that's on the side of your arrow, 350, 400, 500, 250, whatever it may be, that's a spine. That
does not equate to weight.
Yeah.
Which everyone thinks it does.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And so it's a deflection. It's how stiff your arrow is. Anytime we add weight to the tip where your broadhead or field point screws into, that weakens the shaft. Anytime you add weight to the tail end of the arrow, the knock end, that stiffens the shaft. Anytime you cut down a shaft, it stiffens the spine. Anytime you leave a shaft super long, it weakens the spine. So they may come in and buy a dozen arrows and get them cut at 28.5 inches, and then all of a sudden they put in a 150 grain insert. Well, your 350 spine arrow just turned into a 580, 400. I mean, between there, depending. So you've weakened everything. There's a basis, all these arrow charts that you can print them out. You can look them up on your phone. They're easy, accessible. They have different options. Are you shooting 100 grain up front or 125? But you can get too carried away with it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't have that clue. They're like, well, I ordered this from this company, Consumer Direct. Can you glue them in? Well, sure, but not this shaft. Now we got to go step to a 300 or a 250. Yeah. So you kind of have to understand the dynamics.
That's why I love having you guys, because I don't even want to think about it.
And then it's a rabbit hole, because then it's the tuning aspect after that, which takes even longer. It's not just you can buy a pack of arrows online and put a bunch of weight in the front and it's just going to shoot glorious right away. It's just not the way it is.
And don't get me wrong, there's there's one company that I know of, like when you order, you have to fill out all your bow specs, speed, draw length, what bow it is, what cam it is. And then they'll build you a match grade set of arrows. Kinda. But they're not tuning your bow. You know, the big thing right now is if you look at like our friend John Dudley, I hate to bring that name up again and again and again and again, but also the guys that are out west, and I forget Brandon's buddy up in Alexandria that plays a bunch. You know Joel Maxfield. Mm-hmm. Like everything's always come back to the same. 440 grain arrow with 50 grains up front and 100 grain tip. Like everybody's kind of done this big, huge weight forward extreme.
We're going to name names, but I mean,
testing of the,
I mean, like you said, your killers, your guys that actually just shoot a ton of stuff, they're shooting roughly about the same weight arrow. It's just the way it is.
Because it tunes amazing, it flies, your trajectory, you don't have huge pin gaps. Mm-hmm. Now, there's nothing against the guys that go heavy, but there's no real answer for it, in my mind. I mean, I've been proved wrong before.
And like I said, I think it depends on your situation too. I really do. Yeah. I mean, if you're shooting pigs at 20 yards, or like for 8 years, my buddy and I, as we were hunting in Nebraska, we were hunting cattail sloughs and stuff, and you're shooting deer at 5 to 10 yards away. You know, you could hear them coming through the water, and you know, you had one shot, and it might be a little bit more for on. It's not always a broadside shot. So we were shooting more of a heavier arrow, fixed heads. At least I was. But it's all based off of application, you know.
Yeah, and then it's back to those three answers. You know, what if you're going to go shoot an elephant or a Cape buffalo? Well, obviously we're going to do a bunch of stuff different, because you do need that magical kinetic energy number. Mm-hmm. You know, foot pounds that your bow is producing. You know, we're going to run a pretty heavy setup for penetration issues. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to shoot a fixed blade. Mm-hmm. Single cut or single bevel or double bevel, cut on contact. But, you know, that's like saying a concrete block compared to a cardboard box.
There's a lot of factors.
We're in the Midwest. We shoot whitetails and turkey and bear.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, out west you got muleys and antelope, I would say, are probably one of your weaker. And then you have elk. You know, that's the biggest thing is right now, if they haven't left, they're leaving. It's like elk. That's the talk. Mm-hmm. There's some different things on elk.
So what do you suggest for elk? Fixed or mechanical? For somebody that shoots 60, 70 pounds?
Well, again, so I'll ask you, how much weight? Not 60 or 70, but how much weight do you pull?
I'm 46 right now.
And your draw length?
27 and a half.
Okay. I'd definitely shoot a fixed blade broadhead.
I do, but I've definitely been playing with the different options to figure out what's.
Now, the reasoning behind that, I need penetration. On an elk, you have a massive rib cage. So if you're aiming that, you know, the elk, when you look at the lungs and the heart and where it sits a little bit further back, but yet it's such a massive area, your scapula on an elk's shoulder, not the actual shoulder ball and socket, but the scapula comes back so far that you don't have 21 inches like they say to aim at. You have a narrow, long strip. Does that make sense? Like a rectangle.
Yep.
So just the rib and the rib cartilage alone, you know, is going to stop a lot. So that's where your fixed is going to be bone crushing, cartilage crushing, and then get in and cut. So for example, for you, definitely probably even a cut on contact, 2-blade or 3-blade. And then I'm going to make sure that the arrows are unbelievably tuned. So at that 30-yard mark, there's no sideways drift, tail left, tail right, up, down. So your broadhead is the same plane as, you know, as close to Mother Earth as we can get. So I'm not coming in at a huge arc, or my tail isn't left, so then I'm cutting with one blade versus 3 or 2. But
that's interesting that you say that, because I have not talked to you guys about broadhead tuning before. But in the last previous years that I've had like switch up my broadhead in the middle of season, because I've realized as I'm shooting it, like 2 out of the 3, 4, every 3, 4 would like veer off, and I wonder if that's what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I get freaked out because I don't want to. I don't want to have a bad shot.
Right.
So then
you want to make an ethical shot. Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, I'll go to a smaller, like a slick trick or whatever, where I know I'm not gonna have that. That kind of.
I mean, if you wanted to break it down for somebody, like if you throw a dart at a dartboard, right? They have a really elongated point. If it doesn't go in perfectly straight or at a little bit of an arc down, it's not going to stick, or it'll barely penetrate the corkboard. Yeah. Even worse on a plastic dartboard with plastic tips. But that's the biggest thing is everyone comes in, well, I can see at like 40 yards, my arrow's going, whoop. Maybe you're seeing that, there's odd color veins. So if you go orange, white, like every time
sometimes
that
you pick up that white.
Yeah. But shooting through paper is a start, and then shoot group tuning and seeing how your arrows impact. And then, Dan can attest it, shoot your broadheads.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Then you have an answer. But if your broadheads are 8 inches to the right, you got some issues. There's a reason, because there's surface area on that broadhead, and the broadhead is intensifying your flaw in your arrow build, or your arrow tune, I should say. So if your broadhead is to the right 8 inches, that means you have a tail left tear somewhere during the flight process. So paradox of that arrow, the vanes have corrected it, but they can't correct the path. They can only correct the paradox. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like football, if you watch the NFL, they have the little...
This is not the football.
But they have the yellow screen pens, and you can see them make an arc,
yep.
Your arrow is making a right-hand turn somewhere during your coming out of your bow. Then you need to adjust for that. That was wrong. You don't need to adjust. You need to tune for that to get it back straight.
Do you think that fixed blades, you see that more because those blades are out there?
Definitely, yeah. A fixed head it seems like there's more issues with planing, like Wade said. It's just that those blades kind of just steer your imperfections in your tune. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't know if we answered your question, like the positives and negatives, or you said we're going to go down that road.
Yeah.
The positives of a fixed blade is they out-penetrate anything. You're always going to have a cut. There's no mechanical device that's going to fail, right?
Right.
And if your broadhead's inside the cavity, it's always cutting.
Yeah.
Expandables generally kind of a little bit, but it's not constantly cutting. If that animal is moving or running and that arrow's inside the cavity and that broadhead's inside there, it's going to be doing a lot more damage than what a mechanicals can be doing too.
That's what happened with my last deer. Well, my only deer that I've shot with a bow so far, but went in and then she was running and just grinded that up.
That's what killed her.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, the hemorrhaging, the slicing, there's no blade big enough to do what that just did.
Yeah.
But a big pro to expandables would be larger cut. They fly better. What else we got, Wade?
You got blood on spot.
Yeah, that's the one thing that has been a challenge for me, is just the blood. The last one I shot, there's no blood.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of walk like a 50-50 rope, right? So if a deer doesn't move and you shoot it with a fixed blade, I'm just going to stick to deer because that's kind of what we're home-bodied here. But
Right.
I shoot a doe at 30 yards and she doesn't move 50% of the time. That arrow's through her before she knew what happened, right? I have a hole 1.1 inches, maybe,
Average.
and then an exit hole 1 inch, 1.1 inches. If she didn't move. Now, if she moves, usually a deer will go down and then out, right? So if I was aiming at the top of the heart, bottom of the lungs, and she moved, now I'm top of the lungs, my entrance hole is so high that that cavity has to fill up with blood besides that little bit of hide blood. Like so your entrance hole isn't going to produce blood. Your exit hole, hopefully, doesn't close up. I think fixed blades can produce, again, the positives, unbelievable penetration. Cut on contact for the most part, or you're always going to have a cut of some sort, but it's small. The negatives of a fixed blade is you're going to have accuracy issues. No matter how well your bow is tuned, if the wind kicks up 15 to 20 miles an hour, accuracy issues because you have surface area. If you're taking 60, 70, 80-yard shots, accuracy issues because you have, that surface area and you have drag. The slower you slow down your arrow, does that make sense?
Yep.
The worse it's going to be and it's going to drop because you still have gravity pulling everything down.
Right.
The positives of your mechanical, like Dan said, huge wound channels, pinpoint accuracy, less surface area. The negatives of a mechanical are getting less and less and less and less. Because we're not dealing with collars anymore. We're not dealing with rubber.
We're not dealing with O-rings. Yeah.
O-rings, like it's almost fail-proof. I can't say it's 100% fail-proof, but it almost is.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking durability, a fixed head's more durable, but like you said, expandables are getting really tough, man. Same with blade stiffness too.
Yeah. Better materials, better aluminum, stainless. Now we have titanium. So it's lighter and stronger. Smaller ferrules. That's the big thing is people will practice with field points. Let's just say you come into the shop and you say, Dan, I want a dozen RIP TKO 300s and I want 100 grain point. We go in the back and we get some bullet points. We put them in there. They're a 1/4 inch long. Broadhead ferrule's an inch. 7/8 at the smallest. Maybe a 1/2 inch on some fixed.
And you get like a whitetail special. That's
it's huge.
1 1/4 or something. I mean,
so that's two, everyone says.
So when you say ferrule, that's just that's the tip, basically?
That's like the body.
The body of the...
body of the broadhead, sorry.
You guys and your technical lingo.
Well, sometimes we... sometimes we're not that technical. But so again, a lot of people will say, well, it's surface area, it's drag. You just change the spine of your arrow. When you elongated that point, you just change the spine of your arrow. So then practice with a field tip that's longer. Like we have the easy outs, they're a little bit longer. The Easton Pro points, they're longer ferruled field point to duplicate the same turbulence of your broadhead. And then to be honest, the best practice in the world is a broadhead.
That's what I do because I'm so I want to know how it flies.
I think one thing that I really struggle with, especially this time of year, is you get a guy that's going on a big hunt and it's like he spends a ton of money on a bow, a ton of money on arrows, a ton of money on camo, and he buys like 3 packs of broads or 3 broadheads total.
Yeah.
And it's like buy a few packs and then burn up a pack of them, practice
Just
with them.
practice.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I just don't get that.
Right.
Yeah.
Practice. That's the most important part of your whole setup is your broadhead.
Yeah.
And I think some people get a little afraid of spending the money to do that, like on the target, which we have 365 targets. But I have done that ever since we talked about it, and it is worth it. At least I know then. And when I walk out and I know that my arrow is going to hit. I
would rather see somebody put their budget towards a cheaper quiver or sight and buy some good broadheads and buy a target and shoot your broadheads.
Yeah, I think you're just being dumb. You're being lazy. So you walk over to the camo rack and you just dropped $180 on a, code of silence, which by all means I want you to do that. But do you know how many broadheads $100 buys?
Yeah.
That's 2 packs.
And if you use the same broadhead every year, you can just
have those 3 for the next couple of years.
Yeah, sharpie them up and
practice with them, and I don't know.
You cannot. Is it wrong to say you can or cannot buy confidence? You have to produce confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have to produce confidence by buying confidence. So don't skimp on, you know,
Broadheads. Just,
Right.
yeah.
if you're like you say, and I'm not talking about because there's guys that just buy a pack because they already have 12.
Right.
You know,
they have
these
last
are just
year's,
new
right,
and
the same, right, sharp. And
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that would be that's a huge, it's not a turn off, but it's like, okay, really. Or everyone says, well, does it come with a practice head?
yeah, just one.
The practice heads do not fly the
They're
same.
not, exactly.
And that's why a lot of companies don't make a practice head anymore.
Because they know.
'Cause
They're
know it
engineers. They're
right.
like, well, why would we
Right.
waste
How
the
many
money?
people called
yeah.
and said, hey, well, this actually doesn't even fly the same. So
I mean, mega meats, I love them. Dead meats, they come with a,
BMP,
yeah, but it's not the same.
same with the Rage. They don't.
Yeah.
It
doesn't fly
can't
the same.
be, right?
No.
Exactly.
Just
Yeah,
know that
burn
you're
'em.
going to burn it. Yeah, exactly. It
Just
is
put
what it is.
Put it in the budget.
Exactly.
Yep. Like you say, you have to buy the process to get confidence.
Right.
Because there's no better feeling when you walk to 40 yards and you can put a broadhead in the X. Like that.
It's just like
right
shooting
there.
a rifle. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just,
exactly.
Just buy an extra
One
case
day,
of bullets or whatever.
One day I'm gonna do that. I don't ever practice on 40 yards with my broadhead.
You're fine, but we'll get you there. You're on our team now, sis.
Yeah.
We
got the shop on shop.
We gotta fix some arrows, but we'll get
I
you
don't
there.
think the people know there's another contest this year.
I think
didn't
we
you talk
leaked
about
it. We
I think
leaked
you
it,
talked about
but
it a little
I think
bit.
it was on the St. Cloud podcast. We talked with John and Adam, but John's on our team, but Adam's not. But yeah. So Desiree is now on the
winning team.
one of the championship teams. We have. We have. I said one of. See, Dan and I, we come from the team. We're undefeated, right?
Oh yeah.
We're
I
undefeated.
mean, we kind of blew them out of the water last year, but
yeah, I know.
Dan, are you on the other side? Who's on? No, you're on.
Oh, no,
you're on-
he's
so
on
we're
our
all
side.
we're all on the same team.
I think we
Yeah.
deserve like a cheer thing.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yep. There we go.
Anyways,
So we have the shop to shop competition. Desiree's on our team, so now she has some. Would you not say big brothers? Help.
mm-hmm.
And I'm not. She has an awesome setup. We're just gonna perfect it ever so
and
slightly.
she has big bucks.
Yep.
I property.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's just getting the time. I'm a
Well,
mom.
tell your
I'm a
husband
mom
he has
too,
to put you-
and my husband hunts.
You know,
so
you're
it's
gonna have
like,
to tell the husband
You
and watch the
first.
kids because we need points.
You can tell it's a different persona with Desiree being the host because she has like highfalutin tea and a real teacup, like it's or
does it
coffee
say?
cup.
And you can't even pick on me today because I'm actually just drinking Folgers today.
Just regular.
Yeah.
Yeah, hoity-toity.
My cup says, "Go get him."
I'm drinking tea. Two.
Iced tea.
Kind of. Yeah, iced tea. Sweet tea. Anyways, back to broadheads.
We should talk. I just want to say one thing about this because now with this year in Minnesota, crossbows are legal for everybody. So what is the broadhead suggestion for crossbows then? Because they've got the massive.
No fixed heads. That's
Absolutely not.
that's the problem.
99% of the time, no fixed heads.
Yeah.
If you were to shoot a fixed head, I'd probably shoot an SS3 from Slick Trick.
Yep.
Small, cut on contact. The thing
Or
about
that
it,
B3. That'd be good.
the
one, too.
Destruct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something.
So
tiny.
you have to actually like read your owner's manual or ask one of us. You can't. Is it an inch and a 16th? There's an actual diameter on your fixed heads. If somebody were ever to say anything, if you shoot a larger diameter fixed head, it voids the warranty on the crossbow.
Seriously?
Yeah, that comes right from one of the big dogs. Actually, I read it. I'll look in the owner's manual when we're done. I read it somewhere, like literature, so it's not just verbatim.
So it's facts.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
But if you are going to shoot a fixed B3 Destruct or an SS3,
Something itty bitty.
itty bitty.
Short ferrule.
Yeah.
So
Smaller
what about mechanicals? Do you guys isn't not mechanical?
Raven.
Yeah.
Rage.
No collar.
Grim Reaper.
Grim Reaper, 100 grain. Grim Reaper's a 3-blade. Rages are 2-blade. The Raven Steels are 2-blade.
We should talk a little bit about constant phone calls that we're getting about over-the-top expandables because we do sell a manufacturer that is over-the-top expandable, and what that means is the blades fold from the top instead of a rear deploy.
Oh, absolutely. We should talk about it. We
Yeah.
actually did a podcast with this company.
Yeah.
You were on it.
And we had a guy call yesterday and said, it's not opening.
I'll tell you what he said. He goes, I shot through my Glendale buck. and there's no entrance hole. The same size as the ferrule. I said, okay, blades over the top. They open on the inside. And on the exit hole, the broadhead was closed. So what we're talking about is actually just one broadhead company that we have that's over the top. Grim Reaper. Oh, and like Dan said, over the top. They come over the top of the ferrule. And then a huge cutting diameter. 3 blades, 4 blades.
Wonderful design, actually.
The inertia of the arrow, when that tip, it's got a big, long, huge chisel tip. When it hits hide, bone, the inertia of that arrow coming forward and the small slowdown of the tip hitting, the blades go backwards. It's not spring assist, but it's spring unleashed. And then the broadheads are cutting, or the blades are cutting. Now, the same effect happens when it goes through your animal and the arrow is stopped by foam if you're shooting a target, or when you hit the dirt, that arrow stops. The blades, you pick them up and you say, oh, the blades didn't open.
They retract back.
They retract
from inertia.
You're back. So probably after later last year and this year, Grim Reaper crossbow broadhead, it's a 3-blade over the top, 100 grain, is, if not the number one seller out of this shop, it's one of for crossbows. Rage no color is unbelievable. They make a tri-pan, which is titanium. But you have so much force, kinetic energy, and feet per second. Your arrow is traveling so fast on, just for example, like a Raven R10, that a fixed blade back to that surface area, it planes. And when it planes, we can't tune it. We can't twist the cables. We can't move the rest.
Yeah.
I mean, you can fletch you can put different fletchings on and it may correct a little bit, but that's one animal that you're not going to beat. Or that's one feat you're not going to tackle. It's going too fast. If everybody comes in the shop, if they could shoot 280 feet per second, then I wouldn't care what they shoot.
Right.
Because we can tune it out to a certain yardage.
And if you're shooting a correct rest too, not like a hostage rest or something.
Yep.
So what is your guys' go-to broadhead that you shoot? Like, what do you shoot for whitetail?
I shoot a Rage no color tri-pan and a Grim Reaper mini mag or Pro 3 blade. The Pro 3 blade has a black collar on it and it's a swept back blade. So it's 40 degrees, so it increases my penetration. Fortunately, I'm a little bit bullheaded and I pull a lot of weight. So I'm touching on most of my builds is 295 to 305 for feet per second. So I'm never worried about kinetic energy loss or them Grim Reapers. I'll send right through anything and not think twice. I like the Rage no collar, but I like the tri-pan better because of the material. I like titanium. So those will be my two. I'm going to dabble with, it's a Slick Trick torch. Is that what they're called? But they're not in my quiver for North Dakota yet, but I'm going to play with them.
And what's the furthest you'll shoot?
80.
What about you, Dan? What are you going to use?
Pretty much exactly what Wade said. Tri-pan, a Pro 3, or a Mega Meat from G5. Those Mega Meats are sweet. Big cut, 3-blade.
People seem to like those.
Super sharp. Grim Reaper, I think that's just an overall very durable, good expandable, especially for turkeys, for like bear too, something with a big, a lot of fat, a lot of hide. Last year I shot a tri-pan for my bear and that deer in Kansas. I think those three are like the best out there personally. If you're shooting roughly over 60 pounds and over a 28-inch draw.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too. I'm lazy and I don't want to track a deer. Like I don't need practice.
Yeah.
I'm not Inspector Gadget, so
I hate long tracks.
I want blood.
Yeah.
I want to see him go down. so I'm going to take every benefit I can and call this ignorance if you want, but I will never skimp on accuracy, ever. I'm not a pie plate guy, like a paper plate. It's good enough whitetail accuracy, as John calls it, right? Like, that's not good enough for me. If I can't put 3 arrows in a Pringle can at 80 yards with a broadhead.
But that is also why you are a target guy.
Well, I mean, it's the same basis, right?
Thing,
like,
right.
if you aim small, you miss small. Why not hit small?
Yeah.
And back to that being lazy, not track. Like, you shot your bear. Besides, it was thick and nasty. You didn't have to go very far to get him. Your deer was less than that.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can do the same thing with fixed, right? That's the biggest thing about this little chat that we're having. If you do your job and you're accurate and you put it in the boiler room, you're going to be fine.
Another thing too is, I think, look at the anatomy of a deer or what you're hunting, because I think that there is a place for fixed heads too. You know, I really do. But if you hit that shoulder square on, you're kind of SOL in a way. It's just kind of the way it is when it comes to a deer. I mean, unless you're shooting something super close range with just an ungodly heavy arrow with high poundage, you're just not going to have good results. So look at the anatomy and maybe just stray away from that shoulder. And I've hit that shoulder many times with a lot of fixed heads, and I've had minimal results. I've done it.
Yeah. I've actually been thinking about that a lot recently with where I aim and wondering if maybe I need to not aim just a little further back or whatever. Just because if I did,
try to stick to a broadside shot or quartering away.
Right.
You know, that's know your shot angles too.
You know, and that's obviously your anatomy. The biggest thing I think with 90%, that's a big number, but 90%, like, we'll practice, we'll tune, they're doing everything right. But in the heat of the moment, like, you can become stupid, and you'll take a dumb shot, and like, because the killer instinct in you, like I am almost to the touchdown, like, all I have to do is it, and it's there. If you would have waited 5 seconds or maybe shot a minute earlier.
I do that. I play that game all the time. Like, do I take it now? This isn't maybe ideal.
And I want to walk softly because that's why we do it, right? Is for that adrenaline rush, and that's why we're hunters. But in the killer instinct of us, sometimes we become dumb. There's no Band-Aid for dumb. There's no Band-Aid for taking a quartering 2 straight down shot on an average whitetail buck of 200 pounds.
Or shooting a whitetail straight on. You know, I mean, it's just, and I've done it. It's all live and learn, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's why I like this podcast, because I think that this is a good way to to hear about some of those things that have happened and learn from other people, because I talk about this all the time when I'm doing my women's group thing, is I'm like, hey, honestly, you just got to go and hunt. Like, I could tell you anything, but you gotta figure out how you respond to that pressure, because it's different for everybody.
There's some stone cold killers out there that nothing, like, they don't get excited until it's done, and then the wheels come off. But they're so mentally strong, you know. And I think, like, we only see the TV hunters. Right. We only read about the celebrities in articles or the YouTube channels, or even the podcast now is huge, and we'll get some guests on. But there's so many out there that are not televised, and they're just lethal. I mean, every time they go on a trip, Dan's one of them. Like, he went to Kansas, and we're like, yep, it's going to be a deer. I didn't think it was going to be the first 15 minutes of his hunt, but
I want to get like that. That's what I want to be.
But there's a ruggedness, a stone cold killer in everybody. It's just harnessing that. You know, the biggest thing is right now people have been shooting for 3-4 months, and all of a sudden target panic is abroad, and they're stopping in, and it's like, okay, do you fix it now and start your process, which isn't the best, or do you just got to say, self, I'm going to put the pin where it needs to be.
Get it together.
Yeah. And if anybody ever comes in and tells me to send it, you know, that slogan, like, I'm going to slap you. Like,
aim high and let her fly.
Yeah. Aim low, watch it go. Whatever. I love all the cliches, you know. But no, I don't know. You keep firing to us. We'll keep answering questions.
Okay. Well, I think like the last thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was like the good, the bad, and the ugly for broadhead stories.
Oh, I got some good ones. I know Dan's got some better ones.
I got oodles.
You start, Dano.
Yeah. So remember I mentioned that straight on shot?
Yeah.
2013. First year in Nebraska. I watched this very large 9-pointer. I would guess he would have been high 150s. Just
nice.
Mega typical. Watched him, and he made his way through the super thick area into a scrape that was at 10 yards away. And he's coming in. He's quartering 2. I draw back my bow, and I'm in a cottonwood tree, and I'm pretty much skylined. And he comes right into that scrape quartering 2, and I should have just shot him right there because it was barely quartering 2.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks up at me. And he's stomping, and I'm at full draw for over a minute, and he's doing the head thing, you know. And I tried tucking my arm into my armpit because my arm was starting to shake a little bit, and my stabilizer hits my stand.
Oh.
And he wrenched up his head. And at this point, it was like, well, this is going to be my biggest deer ever. And I was probably low 20s at the time. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to shoot him straight on. I'm going to try to kind of tuck it into his neck area and down into his cavity. And I'm shooting an Ulmer edge. Do you know what that is?
Uh-huh.
Super small cut, pivoting blade system, about the worst possible mechanical you could ever take for this shot. Because even if it's inside the cavity, those blades are just moving. It's not cutting, you know. So I shoot him straight on. I get terrible penetration because I was shooting a super light arrow. Just a bad combination. 100% my fault. And long story short, the next morning we jumped him, and I was never able to recover him just because there was minimal blood and whatnot.
So you think you just got into the brisket? Or did you get through that?
I think I killed him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Half the arrow was still inside of him.
Oh.
But there's just no
That's so
hemorrhaging.
tough.
Oh, it is
It is so tough.
awful.
I mean, now it's kind of it's a little bit better because you could call trackers and
right. And like I said, I would
like that.
never make that shot again. And if I would have been shooting a different setup, probably an arrow that would have been 100 grains heavier with a fixed head, like that'd be the ideal situation if you're going to take a stupid shot. Like it probably would have worked for me, but it was just overall not a good situation for what I did, you know. And it's all live and learn. That's archery for you. I mean, if you've never wounded a deer with archery, you're probably, I hate to say it, but it will happen at some point. And
that's
the
why
older you get, the smarter you get, and you don't.
That's why
usually
practice and all this stuff that we're talking about, everything matters. Like buying that extra pack of broadheads
exactly
is.
And I mentioned it was not the ideal broadhead, but it was not the broadhead's fault. It was overall my stupidity.
Because of broadside or slight quartering too.
Yeah.
If you, like, say, a minute earlier or when you first drew, or broadhead or broadside shot, he'd be on the wall.
Yeah.
That's not the story I thought you were going to tell. So we'll come. This is cool because it's not a trophy buck. It's a small doe and custer. That when I shot the fixed blades, this is what happened. So it's a spot and stock situation, and a couple of does were just feeding. There's not like it's in big pine trees, right? They're just feeding on some grass and doing their thing. And there's a rock ledge right behind them. And I snuck up. I had an old, I think it was one of the very first Nikon rangefinders that I think got handed down or something, but I ranged and it was 52 yards. I had a Hoyt Ultratech or Magnatech maybe.
Same thing.
Yeah. And I had went to Cabela's, like I'd made a couple $100 picking rock, and I drove down to Cabela's down here, and I bought some Cabela's camo 4-inch pre-fletched. They didn't cut them. Like I just glued inserts. Like, and
how old were you?
1998. I'd have been 17. And then it was time to get broadheads, and I went to Fleet Farm, and I had like $30 in my wallet, right? And they had this little itty bitty. It looks like an SS3, but it's a piece of shit broadhead. It was $12.99 for a pack of 3.
Like who made it? Like Rocky Mountain or something?
No, it wasn't even a name brand. It was a Fleet Farm brand.
Oh, nice.
Like Fieldstone or something. I don't even know. Like you probably find them in the camping section at Target now. But anyways, I could get 2 packs because I had a 6-arrow quiver. So we snuck up on this doe, and 50 yards, which probably shouldn't have took the shot. Drew back, is on my knees. You could see these big orange and white fletchings, like just, whoo. And she like picked her head up and trotted like 15 steps and just stood there. I went, well, I missed, completely pissed. Knock another arrow. Now she's facing completely away from me. Ranged like 71 yards. So I put the bottom pin on her on our back, and I was shooting a true flyer or true flight.
Oh yeah,
the old camel. Yeah, like you're holding a hammer.
Yeah.
And I remember I just wham, slammed that trigger and watched that arrow arc about 8 feet above her and then land right at the base of the tail. And she went down, spined her. But my arrow went in like 8 inches. So, high fives and all this. We walk up to her, and there is a hole in the 10 ring through both.
Oh, my.
I'd pinwheeled her, but she had no clue what had went on. She was dying, and I thought I completely missed. But there was no blood. I was like...
Wow.
So that was my last time of a fixed blade. Then I went to school in Laramie, Wyoming, and there's a pro shop there, and got to, those guys at that time, they knew what was going on and like switched the whole game. And then it was all about accuracy and less about, the whole penetration game, because we're hunting muleys and whitetails and antelope and then some elk, but I didn't hunt elk.
Right.
So that was just I did everything perfect and I didn't see the end result. So then I took a stupid desperation shot. Luckily I hit her, but if I would have just been calm, she would have died.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Wow.
No, so I guess that wasn't like a negative.
That was not negative at all. That was nice. A good story. Mine looked just awful.
The negative one would be that wide load deer. That was a mechanical. And that's more on the, it just happens. I don't know if you remember that story, but
didn't you shoot it earlier in the neck? But you didn't know.
Yeah. So October 5th, I shot him at 60 yards. And so I shoot a hinge, right? Mm-hmm. So there's not you can still dump it, but it's controlled more or less. So I have time to aim right behind the pocket. I can remember it just like it was yesterday. Right behind the pocket, the hinge clicks, right behind the pocket, his head's down, I shoot. But at 60 yards, I was shooting a little bit heavier arrow. Okay. They were new to us at that time. And I hit him. I knew I hit him. And, of course, he run off, wheeled, and then we went back and got everybody. And there's blood everywhere. Massive amounts of blood. And then 100 yards into it, less and less and less and less and less. Long story short, to speed up the whole process, he didn't die. I hit him in the base of the shoulder, right in front of the shoulder, and it came out his neck. It was a 1/2 inch below his vertebrae and 2 inches above his jugular. And the only reason is because I shot him again in October, or the end of October, and he could see the hole. He's in the shop. I can show you the hole. We left it in the hide. But that's just, that had nothing to, like Dan's story, it wasn't the mechanical's fault. Right. And that was a mega meat.
Right.
Or not a mega meat, the dead meat. Mm-hmm. A little bit smaller than that. It was a deer move. Stuff happens. 60 yards is a lot of time for that deer to react. Mm-hmm. So Positive and negatives. But I still shoot mechanical.
I have one from one of our hunts, but it was basically like just for this woman had come in to shoot, or she was coming on her mentored hunt, and she went to a shop, and the shop gave her a rage broadhead, and she was only shooting 30 pounds. And she shot a deer. I was sitting right next to her. She shot a deer, but it barely, with 30 pounds, it went in one lung, and we tracked that deer for a long time, but we could not.
Never found it. And
it was, that's tough, especially when you're trying to teach someone about.
And then, that's where.
So it's so important to have a good shop, which is
steer you in the right direction.
Steer you in the right direction and ask all the right questions, because you need to get it covered to make sure that when that time comes and you're out there spending time in the woods, that you're doing it the best you can, the most ethical way. So,
yeah, I think you did a great job. It's your first host, but now you got to close us out.
I know. Well, if you have questions about broadheads, or are thinking about changing it up, or need an extra set now because you want to practice with them, stop on in to any of our 3 locations in Rogers, Waite Park, and Brainerd, and talk to any of our guys. They are all very knowledgeable and can let you know what you need, or get your bow tuned up, or if you haven't taken it out yet, please do and stop in. Anything else?
Good job, Des.
Yeah.
It was fun.
All right. Well,
Wade, we'll see you on down the road, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right without
it. It's all good. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to Archery Country Podcast. Stopping in our locations, Waite Park, Brainerd, or Rogers. Check us out online. If you want to chat with one of our experts, you can. On behalf of everybody at Archery Country, see you on down the road.
Thank you for listening to Archery Country Podcast.